Hello, welcome to the Margarita, Rise Up with Margarita show, and welcome. It's my Monday 2 p.m. show that I have every 2 p.m. Eastern Time here in the US. And here in the US, it's Memorial Day. So for those of you who are in service to the US, my hat's off to you on this special day to commemorate that. And it really brings to mind this energy of freedom, right? And freedom and sovereignty go hand in hand. And that is why I really wanted to speak into this topic today about sovereignty and about freedom and what that really looks like, because I've been noticing a lot of light workers don't really have an understanding about what sovereignty really means, but they like to claim that they've got it, but they're not really clear on what that actually is. So I wanted to share about this topic today, 5 ways to embrace your sovereignty. And so I'll give you a definition of sovereignty that is really powerful and probably the clearest definition I've ever seen of it right now. And then also what sovereignty is, and then what sovereignty isn't. And I know that when I'm just going to even share that aspect of what sovereignty is and what it isn't, I'm probably going to ruffle a few feathers, and I'm okay with that, because a lot of light workers are honestly believing a lot of the narrative that is going on around them, and that's part of not being in your power, right? If you're believing all the narratives that are going on and you're taking everything at face value when there's a lot of manipulation going on behind the scenes. And this goes beyond like what people may term as conspiracy theory, right? This is about reality of us being in a spiritual war, because we are, right? And I've spoken into this many times before, and that's why when you're not really connected to what your freedom really is, what your sovereignty really is about, that can cause problems, because then you're creating a life from a place that's not truly authentic, right? So it's super important to understand what sovereignty is and what it isn't. So I'm going to give you some examples on that. Then also why embracing your sovereignty is vital if you're here to be a way shower for humanity during this pivotal time on the planet. And then I will go into the 5 ways to embrace your sovereignty. So good to see everyone here. People don't think for themselves. Unfortunately, you're right about that. Yeah. Okay. This is facts. Yeah. So good to see you, everyone. Thank you for being here. And I'm just going to take a little sip of water. And I just wanted to welcome you today to the Rise Up with Margarita show. As I mentioned, it is Memorial Day here in the US, and, really giving a salute to those who have been giving their lives, and going out there on the front lines so that we can have our freedom here, right? And speaking of freedom, there's this understanding of freedom and sovereignty, and I'm going to go straight into what sovereignty is, what the definition is. Hi, Kara. Kara from Kamloops, British Columbia, Canada is here. Good to see you. Yes, yes. So here's the definition of sovereignty. I'll just go right into it. Okay, so Lisa Renee, if you don't know who she is, look her up. She has the Ascension Glossary. She has, what is the name of her newsletter? Energetic Synthesis, I believe, is the name of her newsletter. And she really speaks into the truth in like very detailed ways. And so it's like you kind of have to have a certain level of knowledge. And sovereignty is not just our power, right? I mean, it is in a way, because I'm seeing someone asking, is sovereignty our power? And I guess in a way it is, but it's a lot more than that. So here's the definition of sovereignty. And if you don't know Lisa Renee, make sure you look her up and get on her email list. Like I said, her stuff is really advanced and really goes deep into all of the mechanisms beyond time and space and what has been transpiring in the universe. And so, there's some level of understanding you'll need around that. But the definition of sovereignty she gave is super clear. It's super clear. I really like it. And it's accurate, just based on my own experience and what I've observed in the collective. So self-ownership or sovereignty of the individual, individual sovereignty, or individual autonomy is a concept of property in one's own person, expressed as the moral or natural right of a person to have bodily integrity and be the exclusive controller of her or his own life, as well as body, mind, and spirit. So it's really about the self-ownership of yourself in totality. And, if one were to ask, well, is power related to that? Of course, right? If you're not in your sovereignty, you're not in your power, right? And so there's this aspect of when you're not really connected to your own bodily integrity, when you're not acting and taking ownership of yourself as the exclusive controller of your own life, then you're not in your sovereignty. And it's not just only in your own life, it's like body, mind, and spirit, right? So that's why, like, some of these narratives that are really popular right now, and some that people think, all this virtue signaling that is going on of like, oh, I look really virtuous if I talk about this topic, right? Or if I say this about this topic, right? And it's just like, you know, someone I follow, and I recommend him highly. James Gilliland. James Gilliland. He's another one, in addition to Lisa Renee, whose work I follow because they're really no bullshit. They're really tapped in, and it's just the truth, right? And one of the things that I've heard him say more than once is basically, if you take whatever's in the mainstream news and flip it, that's the truth. And it really is. I mean, I'm not going to get into all the details, but like all the wars we're perceiving as truth are, there's other things going on behind there. There's all kinds of things going on behind all these, like, oh my God, be worried about this now. Oh my God, be worried about that. Be worried about this. It's like, after a while, you start, like, as you truly awaken, you start to see behind all that bullshit, honestly. And so, yeah, so I'll just leave it at that for the moment, but I'm going to speak now into what sovereignty actually is, in addition to that definition of sovereignty, which was like super spot on. So number one is about embracing the totality of who you are, all of who you are. Like, you're not hiding, you're not like resisting who you are, you're really in the full embrace, of all of who you are, your abilities, your gifts, how you show up, your physicality, emotions, spiritually, all aspects of yourself, right? And like really being in the authenticness of all of who you are, right? So that's one aspect of what sovereignty looks like and is. Another one is embracing your integrity on all levels of your being. So when you are living life from a place of integrity and you're literally like everything that you're aligned with, you are leading your life from that place, right? That is being in your integrity. Like, an example of being out of integrity is, for instance, maybe you don't like kale, right? But then you'll eat kale anyway. I mean, there could be so many reasons why. I'm not going to go into the details of, the minutia, but like, that's just an example, right? Like, if you're just not a kale person, but then you like eat kale just to appease someone, it's kind of like that, right? Like, that's a very simple example of not being in your integrity. So it's really acting from that place of the fullness of who you are and being in the integrity of that. Like, so you're even expressing what you mean and saying what you want to say, and you're not holding back, and you're in the fullness of your expression as well. And so I'm also going to, yeah, Alchemy Coach is sharing, humankind's sovereignty is under attack for a long time, but these times are just like, emoticon, mind blown, right? And that's true. Like, I mean, it's been happening for many years. I mean, it's been an intentional buildup, right? But now it's literally the 3D's falling apart, like the patriarchal, all that stuff is falling apart. And which is why it makes me laugh every time someone who's like believing the narrative of the capitalist patriarchy as if it's still around it makes me laugh, right? Because it's falling apart. So it's just so funny. So by the way, make sure that you hold your questions till closer to the end, right? Because then I can answer it more, and then also make sure there are questions that are pertaining to this topic of sovereignty. So number 3 is activating your full potential and operating at that higher frequency, right? So it's kind of like you are awakened in your potential as a divine being on this planet. You have opened up into that, and you are functioning and leading your life from that higher frequency. And don't get it warped, right? Like, it's not about good vibes only, right? That's a whole other thing. It's because, like, I mean, it's totally unrealistic to have good vibes only, right? And like, and to really be in that high frequency space all the time, if you're in the human state, right? And the reality is that, and also I want to remind you that any questions really need to be pertaining to the topic at hand. No random questions, right? Because I ain't going to be answering that shit. I just won't. Okay. So another aspect of what being in your sovereignty is seeing the oneness within yourself and prioritizing seeing that in the world, right? So in other words, you're in the unification within yourself, and so you're not like in this polarity of like hate love, and like, male bad, feminine good, or any of this polarity crap that's going on. I mean, that's literally the division tactic, right? Like, or and I'll get more into what sovereignty isn't, right? But that's just kind of an example. You're really just seeing the oneness in yourself, and then also seeing oneness in the world. Like, even now, right? There is oneness that is also showing up now, as much as the 3Ds crumbling around us and everything that's archaic and old paradigm is falling apart, quite literally right now. This is really about seeing that oneness that is emerging, right? And so that's also what sovereignty means, is that you're able to see all that and function from that place. Number 5, you are not participating in the illusion of division and victimhood narratives that are popular and being played out. I'm going to speak a little more into that when I'm talking about what sovereignty isn't, right? But it's just like, sovereignty is definitely not being in victimhood and talking about how oppressed you are all the time, right? Like, I mean, that's totally the opposite of sovereignty. So it's really about, you're not even participating in that illusion. You're not even like, that's not even real, number 1. And like, it's certain things are certainly playing out on the world stage, right? And at the same time, you don't need to energize it and keep it alive by believing in it, right? Those who are truly in their sovereignty, like, are not even seeing all this illusion and narratives as truth, right? They're not even like reacting like, oh my God, this is terrible, right? Because it's not even real. It's like, what would you do if there was something there that wasn't really there? Like, you probably would just, be like, go about your day, right? And that's what you would be doing when you're in your sovereignty, right? Is that you're just literally not participating in the illusion that other people may be. It's fine, because everyone's a sovereign being, and you can choose what you want to believe or act on, or how you want to live your life, right? But when you are living from a place of sovereignty, you are literally not participating in the illusion that everyone else is believing in, right? It's like a whole choice. Oh, I love this. Alchemy Coach is sharing, divided people are easier to control. That is the point, and I've shared that like numerous times. That is why the division program that is deployed right now is so effective, because so many people haven't healed their shit and they haven't healed their trauma. And so when you're believing, when you're in a place of fear, and then you're believing all this division programming that is being deployed, then of course you're going to be easier to manipulate, right? Like, you'll more easily do certain things that are like against your integrity, like if you're scared, honestly, right? And so that's intentional. This is all intentional. So I'm really loving that observation. Yeah. And another one is saying they want to keep us also in fear, low vibing. That's the point, right? That's the objective. Keep them all in fear, especially the light workers, especially the star seeds, especially all those super powerful, almost non-human individuals, right? If you're a star seed, you like me, right? We have literally like a different genetic coding that we don't we actually are super powerful. And if we actually activate those codes, and that's something I do with my clients who are star seeds and who are light workers and empaths, then you're just like, and then you're like literally functioning from that. And that is super important, which is why I loved what you shared about, the whole low vibing thing, staying in fear and everything, because if you actually just fully embraced all of your power, and then of course committed yourself to embracing your power and on a continual level, and that means on all the levels, not just feeling powerful, because that doesn't mean shit to just feel powerful, because that is fleeting. I'm talking about cultivating your power. I'm talking about being awakened fully into the knowing of who you are, and then committing to that continual cultivation. So you're just literally at this place of like, you're a frequency, right? And that's something that, just to share, I mean, I get that a lot myself. People saying that they can feel my energy or my vibration or frequency or whatever they're sharing, right? It's like, it's a feeling. And that's because I've cultivated it and I've had a lot of time to do so, right? But it's also a certain level of commitment that I've stepped into for myself, because that's my mission, right? Is to really step up and be committed to this work. And so and that's what you get to have too, right? You get to also develop and embrace that fully. And so also what sovereignty is embracing your freedom from the higher perspective. And so what I mean by that is that your freedom is not something that you need to work on or that you need to earn, right? You don't need to earn getting free, because that's another piece about being sovereign, is that you already see yourself as being free. You don't wait to get free, right? If you're waiting to get free, then you've missed the point, right? Because the reality is that you're already free. And if anyone's actually telling you you're not free, that's just manipulation right there, right? Because you are a free being, and whatever that freedom is based on your own belief too. Because if you don't believe you're free, then you're not, right? If you do believe you're free, then you are. And it's really about a knowing of who you are, right? And so it's not about like, I'm going to wait till I get free. I'm going to wait till I have permission from like a source outside of myself to give me freedom, or to, so that I can earn my freedom, right? Like, I mean, you earn your freedom by being born, right? You earn your freedom and your sovereignty by existing, right? You don't need to earn shit. Like you just are, like you are the sovereign being already. But whether or not you actually see yourself like that is a whole different thing, right? Because then that shifts everything entirely, right? And that's why light workers sometimes get really susceptible to that, because they're believing things that aren't like really true, right? Yes. And also not identifying with the old matrix or the system, right? So a lot of those who are not in their power, not in their sovereignty, will complain about the system, will just talk about the system. And yes, there are things that are not working. That's why everything's falling apart around us, right? And we get to be engaged in what we get to create now, right? Like, so shit's falling apart. And so what do you want instead, right? Sovereign beings, like, they don't even identify with this old matrix, this old paradigm, or even the system, or seeing themselves as part of the system, right? If you identify as such, then I guess so that's your experience, right? But it's really about, what are you perceiving? What are you believing about your existence, right? Also, what sovereignty is taking ownership of your place in this world as a galactic being, instead of staying small and local, right? Because, I totally get it. When you're a spiritually conscious entrepreneur, you're, a light worker who wants to be a leader of light, who's graduating from that into being a leader of light. there will be levels where you will get triggered at, and that's just natural. That's the way life is, right? Whenever you level up, you will get triggered about money, about time, about your capability, about so many things, but those are the top three ones usually. And if you are really taking ownership of your sovereignty, you are no longer playing small. You're no longer, like, I'm afraid what people are going to say, or, like, I'm just going to, stay local and just, only, help those who are in person, right? Like, that's one way. But if you are really here to serve in a higher way, it's really about impacting the world and doing it globally. And that's why the whole virtual platform is super important because, I mean, first of all, it's free in the most basic sense, right? Like it's a tool you get to use to really reach more people. And so that's why, as you can see, like even sovereignty is about the fullness of your expression and your visibility and how you're showing up in the world, right? And you're also not playing small. Like when you're in your sovereignty, you are playing a big game and you are going for it and you are not letting yourself get stopped, right? Also, you are seeing yourself as unlimited, no matter what your challenges you may face in life, right? Like, because we all have challenges, everyone has challenges, everyone has something they're moving through, right? But it's a matter of, are you going to let that, fuck your shit up, right? Or, like, to put it plainly, or are you going to actually still, even in that moment, see your possibility? See how unlimited you really are, even in that moment. Like, you can even be honest with it and be like, wow, this moment really sucks. This is really disappointing, or this is super sad and it's really impacting me right now. And I still see my possibility. Even now, I still feel my possibility, right? And so that's really important. And I'm seeing someone sharing here, energy knows no time, distance, or restrictions. Absolutely. And that when you're really in your sovereignty, you don't see any restrictions. And one of the things that, I actually did a masterclass on recently, it was called Creating Wealth in the New Earth. And that's because a lot of light workers be all, I'm sovereign, I'm like unlimited. And then you talk about money and they're like, you know, they can't pay their bills and they got all these money stories about how they can't do this and they can't do that. And it's like, that's part of being in your power, right? Like, I mean, if that is a sore spot for you, that's something that you get to open up and clear and heal. Because you're still seeing yourself as limited with your money, right? I mean, so that's just an example, right? Of like when you're truly unlimited, you even see that with like, wow, I have access to everything I need, including my time and my money and my capability. I have access to everything I need because we all do. Like we all have the same level of access. And whether or not we believe we do is a whole other story, right? And then lastly, what sovereignty is embracing your authentic truth and prioritizing truth even if it may not be popular. So, because there are a lot of narratives going around right now, including in the spiritual community, including in the lightworker community, of all this virtue signaling of like, oh, I look like a good person if I talk about this in this way, or like I look like I'll be perceived as kind and caring if I say such and such, right? Versus, I don't believe that shit. I don't know. I don't think that's true, like, and then actually speaking into that, right? Like that is an example of being in your authenticity, right? And speaking your truth is you're just speaking the truth of who you are. And I'm going to get into a little bit of what that does not look like, right? Because some light workers think, just bitching and moaning and complaining and they're speaking their truth. That ain't speaking your truth. That's complaining. Okay. There's a difference. There is a difference. Okay. Just checking out some of the comments here. And just as a reminder, I am only speaking into questions that are pertaining to this topic of sovereignty and embracing your sovereignty rather than random questions, right? Because otherwise we'll be here all day and you get to get the info you came for, right? And someone is sharing, I've been feeling so triggered and impacted by circumstances, and even then my miracles are clear ahead of me and behind me. This is keeping me know I am in my power way more than I thought. Yes, absolutely. Yes, you are. And the reality is that, and now I'm going to speak into what sovereignty isn't, right? Because I just shared with you, like, I think it was like 11 points of what sovereignty is about. And before that, I shared the definition of sovereignty. And now I'm going to share what sovereignty isn't, because I think this is where a lot of light workers and people in the spiritual community, especially when they're just awakening, get really confused about. So sovereignty isn't engaging in division tactics in the world. So anything where the world is encouraging you to see division in yourself, to see yourself as divided from God, to see yourself as divided from others, to divide up humanity, to divide up, these people here, these people here, these people over here, right? Anywhere where there's a division game going on of, you know, division tactics in the world, right? That's not what sovereignty is. Because sovereignty is really actually being connected to the oneness, as I mentioned earlier, right? So sovereignty is not engaging in the division tactics of the world, and like, micromanaging and severing people, and like all these people over here are like this, right? All these people over here, they're like that, right? Another thing what sovereignty isn't is constantly reacting to everything in the world as if everything you're seeing is the truth. Because here's the reality, like I said earlier in our broadcast today, is that what you're actually being shown as the narrative is usually the opposite of what is going on. And, things are going to be getting revealed in the next coming months that are going to be showing the truth. And it's going to blow some minds. But if you are really awakening and you're truly seeing behind the veil and all these bells and whistles and smokes and mirrors, like, you're actually going to see that you don't need to react to everything that's coming down the pipeline, because it's usually implemented on purpose to get you in that state of like an unregulated nervous system, right? I mean, that's really part of their goal, right? Is to get us in the state of like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, like, I mean, and panicking about our body, panicking about our health, panicking about, do we have access to food? Do our babies have access to food? All this stuff, right? And, like, of course, prepare and do your thing that you need to do for yourself and your family and people you love. And at the same time, see beyond that shit, right? That's not sovereignty, believing all these lies that we're being pumped with on a daily basis. Also, what sovereignty isn't: complaining and being rageful and calling it power. Being enraged, like, there's a difference between kind of righteous rage, right? And that doesn't mean you're like thinking yourself as super righteous, right? That's not what that means. It's usually when there's evil coming and evil is showing itself to you, and then you are saying, not here, not now, I take a stand, right? That is a certain level of taking a stand for the light. But what a lot of light workers, especially when they're new on their awakening path, and especially when they're not yet grounded in their power, they think that bitching and moaning and complaining about the world and being rageful is power, is being in their power. That's not being in your power. When you are constantly doing that, you're actually in a reactive stance, and being reactive to your surroundings on a regular basis is not power. That's just simply a reaction. And it's not a reaction that's empowering either, right? And believe me, I get it, like when I was younger, like back in the day, like I was in punk rock and I had a lot of rage and there was a lot of shit that I had to heal yet at that moment. And since then I've done tons of work and that's been addressed. And at the same time, when you are constantly enraged and you're constantly having drama in your life and you're constantly complaining and all this stuff, guess what you're creating? You are creating this frequency of complaining, of dissatisfaction, of ultimately fear. That's really what that's about. Like, rage feels super powerful when you're in it. Believe me, like I said, I was in punk rock. I was slam dancing with the best of them, okay? And like, I had lots of rage and I was just like, no one can match my rage, right? So I get how powerful that feels. But that's not power. It feels powerful. but that is not power. And there's a difference between like being pissed off, like, right? That's why you see all these like superhero movies of like the really powerful superhumans who like get turned to the dark side, right? Because they basically are just reacting to all this negativity, and they stay in the negativity. And if you're super powerful and you're cultivating that negativity, you're going down a darker path, right? And I mean, and that's certainly a choice if that's what you want. But I wouldn't recommend it, especially if you're technically a light worker and you're really working with the light and that's your job, right? So complaining, being rageful, calling it power is one of the biggest illusions that a light worker can have. Because that doesn't mean you're powerful. It just means you are really dissatisfied with yourself and with the world. And you get to be, right? If there's stuff going on that's not working in your life, you get to be dissatisfied about that. And because you're a powerful being, you get to shift things around and change your reality and choose something different, right? Another thing, what sovereignty isn't, is, as I was just sharing, is using the whole thing about being a rebel, right, as a reason to lash out, as a reason to be rageful, right? And then saying, oh, well, I'm this rebel, right? I'm this rebel for the light. Again, been there, done that, right? I was a punk rocker for like in the middle of New York City for X amount of years. I was like the one who would be out in the streets fucking shit up with people. Okay, I was that person. I was the person you did not want to be in a dark alley with, because that's where I was at. And I'm not saying that was a good thing, but I definitely learned, right, what worked and didn't work for me. And so, so being a rebel just for the sake of fucking shit up is not taking a stand for the light. If your priority is to like lash out instead of doing your inner work and implementing change from within and creating impact without, then you're focusing on the wrong thing, right? So let me know if this is making sense. I'm seeing someone is saying yes. Address negativity, don't stay identified with it. Absolutely. Yes. So I'm seeing some folks agreeing and resonating with what I'm sharing. And I'm glad, because a lot of light workers are actually doing a lot of this. So I wasn't quite sure if we would be like, you're full of shit, Margarita. And, I mean, if that's what happens, that's what happens. But that's not going to stop me from speaking on what's going on right now, right? Because I'd rather check my ego and not make it about me and like, oh God, I don't know what people are going to say, right? And it's more important to me to be of service and to show up and be like, this is bullshit. This is not, right? So, and that's more important. Yeah. Alchemy Coach is sharing. Yeah, being a rebel just for the sake of it. Been there. Yeah. And I mean, it's fun when you're like in your teens or early 20s, but then like, then you grew up, right? And you realize that doesn't work. That doesn't work when you're really here, here to play a big game and have a big mission, and you've got a big purpose in the world, right? So another aspect of what sovereignty isn't, still believing and operating from within the matrix instead of outside of it. So meaning like everything that we're experiencing right now, everything you see on social media, like you get to question, like even my stuff, you get to be like, does that resonate with me? Like, I mean, that's what this is for, is to develop your critical thinking, right? Instead of just ingesting whatever you're spoon fed. And if you're, and I talk about this all the time, if you are watching mainstream news, my recommendation is to start turning that shit off, because that is one of the ways the fear paradigm is deploying their fear tactics, right? Because like the shit they report isn't even like accurate, right? Like, I mean, all this stuff with, everything that's been going on with all the like how would I call like this stuff that they've been rolling out since 2020, right? If like people who are not connected with their sovereignty are still believing all that shit, are still believing, certain things are still required right now. They're still believing that they can't access their freedom or they can't do certain things, right? It's really about not connecting with, oh yes, well everyone says so, so therefore it might be true, right? It's like have the critical thinking within yourself, develop that within yourself to just question things, like what if that's not maybe true? What if this fear mongering that I'm being like having shoved down my throat, what if that's not true? And just question these things because they're not true. Spoiler alert, they're not true, right? Okay. And another thing too is seeing yourself as limited in any way. That's not sovereignty. So, anywhere where you see yourself as limited, if you see yourself as limited with time, if you see yourself as limited with money, like, oh, I can't do this because of money, or I can't do this because I don't have the time, I can't do this because I'm not capable, or I'm not gonna, I can't do this because I'm not worthy or I don't deserve it, right? Those are all versions of seeing yourself as limited. And a sovereign being doesn't see themselves as limited, right? Like, I mean, a sovereign being might have a moment of like, okay, this sucks, this moment sucks, this is very disappointing, but the reality is that this does not limit me, and this does not speak into me being limited on any level, right? Another aspect of what sovereignty is not, and I mentioned this earlier when I was talking about what sovereignty is this whole aspect of waiting to get free. It's like you were born free, right? Like you were born free. You were born sovereign, and then along the way, you got taught like, oh no, you can't do this because that will upset this person, or no, you can't say that because that will upset this person, right? And then so we just want to have that acceptance, and if we have a lot of trauma, then you're going to see that as like being connected to your worth as well. And if that's you, then, do that work to heal that, right? Like do the healing work to heal that, because anywhere where you are still operating from a place of trauma and a place of limitation, and waiting to get free instead of just already knowing that you are, is where you are limiting yourself and you're not being in your sovereignty. Also, glamorizing and identifying with victimhood. So it's this aspect of, well, I experienced such and such, so therefore I'm oppressed, right? I'm this victim, right? So therefore, like everything sucks, my world sucks, I have no opportunities, and like it's all this person's fault, or it's all that person's fault, right? Like that's victimhood. Blaming and not taking ownership for any shit in your life, that is the epitome of victimhood, right? And being in your victimhood ain't cute, right? Like it might be cute when you're like 13 or 14 and you're like being really emo and whatever, like you're feeling super expressive about, right? Like been there, done that too. And that's, and then taking that as like a way of living and glamorizing your victimhood and making it look cute, and like, because you'll see it on social media. It's something that like I see all the time, which is like so ridiculous, where it's kind of like glamorizing how everyone's in victimhood, glamorizing, oh yeah, well, I can't do this because I'm oppressed, I can't do this because of that, or I can't do this because so and so fucked my life up and now I'm like this, right? It's like that is not sovereignty. Sovereignty is taking ownership of yourself 100%. Everything you create in your life, taking ownership of whatever you've contributed to your experience at this very moment, right? And that means all, yes, the crappy things that you're noticing, but also all the amazing things that you created, right? Like for those of you who have an issue with receiving and have issues with feeling like you're deserving, right? Receive that shit. Like I created that amazing thing, right? I created this amazing opening where clients could find me and now I get to serve them, right? Like I made that happen. So it's not just only creating the stuff that you're unhappy about, but I did want to lead with that because a lot of light workers are all like, well, if my circumstances were different, or well, if this person didn't fuck me up like from 5 years ago, right? Or all this stuff that reeks of victimhood. when you can start to transcend that and actually stop identifying with your victimhood, stop identifying as this victimized person, right? Which kind of goes into the next point about like identifying with being oppressed, right? Anywhere where you're identifying with being oppressed as like, oh, well, I can't do that, I'm oppressed. Or like, my life sucks because I'm oppressed. Or like, I don't get certain advantages or certain access because I'm oppressed, right? No, it's only because you just believe that you can't access things, right? I mean, that's the whole thing about being in that higher frequency, because it's not just about good vibes only and just feeling awesome like 24 hours a day. It's about cultivating a mindset and a lifestyle and a way of living where you are committed to really just seeing yourself as like, I get to have what I want because I'm here for something big and I got a big purpose in life and I'm going to get it, right? So that is super, super important. And also another aspect of what sovereignty isn't is being attached to the fear and trauma programming. So a lot of light workers, they love to hang out in the whole, I'm traumatized. I'm a victim of trauma. I experienced this trauma. Like, I'm not making light of it. Like, I experienced a lot of shit like that. If you've been reading all the captions in my reels, like you already know, where I come from around all that, right? Like, I've already shared a lot of what I've been through, right? And the reality is that most people would look at a lot of the stuff that I experienced with, violence and all this stuff and, all the stuff I've experienced. And they'd be like, damn, like I'd be like fucked up if I were you, right? And for a while I was, right? But then I did my work and I got that shit addressed, right? And, if I can do it, anyone can do it, right? But you need to have that commitment and you need to want and to be willing to transcend the fear and trauma programming instead of wallowing it like mud, like a pig in shit, right? Because that's what so many light workers do. That's what so many people in the spiritual community do, is they just like talk about their traumas like day in, day out. And they talk about being in trauma like day in, day out. And it's like that's their identity, is this traumatized individual. And like I said, I'm not making light if you are experiencing trauma or have had that, right? But what I'm saying is address it, heal it, transcend it. Don't hang out there like it's like, your life, right? Transmute it. Exactly. It's time to transmute that shit. And then another aspect of what sovereignty isn't is dimming your voice out of fear. And so this is something that a lot of light workers, they say, oh, well, I'm an empath, so I can't do that, right? Again, a limiting belief. That is not sovereign to think of yourself like that, right? Like, oh, well, I'm just not photogenic, or I'm just really shy, or I'm an empath, right? It's like, I'm an empath and I show up all the fucking time, right? I'm an empath and an introvert. Some people think, oh, well, Marguerite, it's easy for you because you're this extroverted person. It's like, I ain't an extroverted person. I'm just in service. I just show up because that's what I get to do. And that's what I'm committed to. And as you can tell, like it just juices me up, right? To be in my purpose. And when you are juiced up in your purpose and you are leading from that place of service, it becomes less about the ego and are people going to like me? What do they think of me? Who cares what they think of you? Right? Like, so you got an ex or like a childhood friend or a family member who might think you're crazy. Newsflash, if they really do, or if they really think that way after you showing up on a video or something, then they probably already do, right? So what are you going to do about it? So are you going to let that dictate like your purpose? Are you going to let that smother your purpose and your shine and your light in the world? Or are you going to do your shit anyway? Are you going to show up in the world anyway? Are you going to speak your truth anyway? Or are you going to say what's acceptable? Are you going to say all the virtue signaling, that everyone is talking about? Like, oh, this is the narrative. Like, it's acceptable for me to speak this narrative. And if I say that, then I'll be making nice. I'll be like not rocking the boat. It's like, if you're really here to be a leader of the new earth, get used to rocking the boat. And not for the sake of rocking the boat, not for the sake of just being a rebel and for just like spouting and complaining and doing all that shit, right? But actually taking a stand for the light, when others are taking a stand for their fear, right? And that is guaranteed going to rock the boat, because not everyone is ready for that. Not everyone is prepared for that. But it's your job as a light worker to cut through that shit with your platinum sword and show the truth instead of propagating bullshit narratives that are happening in the world, right? That's super, super important. So that said, here's why embracing your sovereignty is vital if you're here to be a way shower for humanity during this pivotal time. So first of all, your I am identification is powerful. So in those moments of those things that I brought up where you're saying, oh no, I am traumatized. I am a trauma victim. I am a victim. I am oppressed. You are literally identifying yourself as a person who does not have sovereignty and who is at the beck and call of fear, right? Excuse me. And because that's what you're saying with I am, right? Whatever you say at the end of your I am sentence, you are declaring as your truth. So if you can see why saying, oh, I'm this oppressed individual, right? I am, in victimhood. I am a victim because of these other people, right? You are declaring your reality as that. And then vice versa, if you were to step into your sovereignty about your I am statements, it would look more like I am power. I am unlimited. Like I am in my own oneness and I see oneness outside of me. I am part of the oneness. Also, I easily transcend my victimhood. I easily, transcend my identification with being oppressed or, being attached to my trauma or my fear, right? Like, even if like maybe you're not just yet, right? Like maybe you're not in the space you want to be just yet, but to say, I am transforming that now is also a declaration. And then, of course, saying, I am in my power now. I am sovereign. I take ownership and claim all of who I am in my bodily integrity, body, mind, soul, spirit, and heart, right? I take ownership of all of it, and no one else has power over me, right? Like no one can say, oh, now I grant you freedom, or now I grant you power. Like, because it's within you, right? Like no one can give you what you don't already have. And at the same time, you get to reclaim too if you have given that power away. And another reason why embracing your sovereignty is so vital if you're here as a way shower is how you claim your reality and way of being directly affects your life and what you create. Like it will affect everything in your life. You think power is just about like, oh, I feel awesome and today I feel like I had a great download. No, that's not power, right? Being in your power means in all aspects of your life with how you're showing up in the world. Your relationships are thriving. Your platonic, romantic, business relationships are thriving, right? Like you're really showing up in service in your purpose, in your really impacting other people's lives. You're making money easily, right? Because you're unlimited and you're taking ownership of your power in all aspects, which also includes financially, right? And also just feeling like you're cultivating, your higher frequency of what you're here and committed to in the world, right? All of that is super connected. So it's not, being in your power is not just like, oh, I feel good today. Like it's not a feeling. It's a cultivation. It's a lifestyle. It's what you're showing up and creating in all aspects of your life, right? So that's why being embodied and activated in your power is so super powerful. And that's something that I actually help my clients with, to not only get activated into their divine codes of power, because usually they're latent in us, but also to then apply that in the world and then to impact all aspects of their life, right? So now getting down to the 5 ways to embrace your sovereignty. So number 1, connect with your power. So this is something I've been kind of like hinting to. This is really, really important, is that when you connect with your true power, you can start opening into it through healing work, being curious, genuinely curious about, your next level, about your expansion, about what you get to create in the world. You can do sovereignty affirming affirmations and declarations, but usually it's a level of commitment that you get to commit to, right? I'm looking at my notes if you're wondering what I'm looking at over here, because I just want to stay on point. And also one of the quickest ways to not only connect with, but also activate and get embodied in your divine powers through activation work, which I do. I am actually literally an activator of the new code of power. And so that's something that I actually do very quickly. It happens instantaneously. And then I do help and guide and support my clients into how that gets to look like in the rest of their life, right? Because it's like, it's one thing to get activated in it, and then it's another thing to be supported in implementing that into all aspects of your life, right? Clear your attachments to pain and suffering. That's number 2 with how to embrace your sovereignty. So really, literally clear your attachments to pain and suffering. Because if you are still experiencing trauma issues with that, like, and I don't do trauma work, right? But I'm just speaking to the fact that if you're still dealing with that, then you literally have not really released your attachment. You are not really willing to let go of your pain and suffering. And that's what it requires. It does require you to release your attachment to pain and suffering in order to transcend. If you're not ready to do that, then you will not. And that's just how it works, right? Number 3, keep choosing your light no matter what, right? Because you will given so many opportunities to choose something else. And because that's what being in self-mastery means, right? It doesn't mean, you're in your mastery when only things are going well for you, right? Because not everything is going to go your way. You will receive and experience disappointments, challenges, letdowns. There will be things that will sadden you, right? But the reality is that what are you choosing? What are you choosing as your reality? Because you can experience your disappointments, you can experience your challenges and not be taken off center by it, right? Because when you're really in your power, you're cultivated in that aspect where you can still experience disappointment, but you can quickly shift that and transcend that so it doesn't take you out for the rest of the day, right? And that's what happens when you're really in your power, is that it's a cultivation because you keep choosing your light, no matter what is going on, no matter if stuff is going down, every opportunity you're given, you're choosing yourself, you're choosing your light, you're choosing your power. That's also a third way of embracing your sovereignty. Number 4, develop critical thinking about what you are being shown by the old matrix. And so, there is a greater divide between the old matrix and the old paradigm, which is based on fear, manipulation, greed, etc. And the new paradigm or the new matrix, which is really based on tapping into your divine power, trusting all of your intuition, operating from that higher frequency of a highly aligned place, right? Connecting with your God self, implementing that, and approaching and leading your life from that place of creatorship. So it's a total different vibration of creating from a place of love, joy, and abundance. And so that means with all the things, right? Like it shows up in your relationships, it shows up in your bank account, it shows up in the impact that you make in the world. And so make sure that you're developing critical thinking about what you're being told is true. Because anything that you're being told is true by anything mainstream news, anything really on the TV that has been cultivated and paid off to share a certain narrative with you is likely just rooted in fear and manipulation and illusion. It's not even true, right? So develop that critical thinking so you can really think for yourself and really start trusting your own intuition on things, right? Because a lot of the reason why a lot of light workers have drunk the Kool-Aid around all the narratives that are going on right now is because they haven't cleared out that fear within themselves. Like they're still attached to trauma and things like that, right? So trust your intuition, develop critical thinking. Number 5, commit to raising your frequency on a regular basis. And again, this is not about good vibes only. This is not just about feeling good all the time, right? Because that, there's a difference between spiritual bypassing and also not operating within the matrix, right? Not identifying as being part of the matrix. And, because we're being bombarded by toxins every day on a physical, emotional, psychic, mental levels. Like we're literally being bombarded. There's actually like vibrational transmissions that are being like beamed out to us on a daily basis, right? And then now they're trying to like kind of cloud the sun a little bit so we don't have as much access to the ascension codes and the upgrades it gives us. I mean, that's not going to succeed, so I'm not going to even like go into detail about that. But there are certain things that they're really trying in ways that are a little bit more subtle but very impactful to keep us in a place of fear. And when you are really committed to your power, committed to your purpose in this world, you are actually committed to raising your frequency on a regular basis. It's literally a daily upkeep. And sometimes throughout the day, it's something you get to also do. And so this is about committing to your frequency, maintaining an energy level of sovereignty, and that once connected, you strengthen your immune system of your light, your divine power, your connection to God. Like all of that needs to be intact. Anywhere where you are in division with God or not believing in God is, or that you're not connected on some level, that's part of the division work right there. Okay. So someone is asking, will this be a video to rewatch? Yes. As always, it will be in the video section. If you swipe twice on my page on Instagram, you will see all those videos there, and this will be one of them once it's ready and published there. And then on Facebook, there is also that video section as well, so you can check it out there. Okay. Yeah, someone's saying, "Oh, I forgot paper and pen." Yeah, it's like when you come to these lives, it's like it's time to take notes. So like make sure your journal is open. Okay, so those were the 5 ways to embrace your sovereignty. And I know I covered a lot today, but I do have like maybe I can take care of like maybe 2 questions at the max because we're already close to the top of the hour. And make sure that these questions are connected to the topic at hand, because all other ones I'm ignoring completely. Sorry about that. My timer went off. Okay. So any questions about this topic on sovereignty and embracing your sovereignty, what sovereignty is and what it isn't? Okay. So I'm seeing a question here. How do you address the intersect with culture, race, and oppression? It does exist, so is it more about the attachment to it? Well, the reality is that's part of the dialogue of the old matrix, right? Is like the whole, you are oppressed, right? And it's like, and that's the whole point of what I was just sharing is that, believing that we are oppressed on any level, right? Like, is there injustice in the world? Of course, right? But it's about, are you going to operate from within that paradigm? Or are you going to operate outside of it? Because here's the thing, it's like, it's not like, oh yes, we're all one and there's no injustice in the world whatsoever, right? Like, that's not what I'm saying. Like, I grew up, I'm a woman of color. My partner, as you saw, like in my celebration of our anniversary, he's obviously a man of color, and so it's like we both had some very old matrix experiences around that, right? So what I'm saying is that you can either operate from within that system of believing that it has any power over you, and you keep identifying with it over and over, or you just don't, right? Like, you don't need to keep identifying with a system that is built on the old matrix and an old paradigm, right? You just function outside of it. That was what I was sharing, right? Is that it's not about participating in a program that does not benefit you, right? Okay, some questions are coming in. And how do you operate outside of it? Like I just said, stop operating as if it's real. Stop operating as if it has any power and control over you, because then you're waiting for others to give you permission to live and to exist and to be free, right? Okay. How do we embrace sovereignty when emotions are triggered and you see yourself about to react, but you'd rather respond? I'm not quite sure I understand what that question is. But there, it looks like embracing sovereignty when emotions are triggered. Well, first of all, do the work around your triggers, right? That's like, you need to get to the root of what you get triggered about, because anything you are triggered about is a total indication that that is still unhealed. So if you've got some unhealed shit, heal that shit, and then go into the talk about sovereignty, right? Because if you're still in a triggered state and you're still like traumatized by certain things, and that's fine. You're at where you're at, in your path, but that's the complete indication that there's something that's unhealed and that it gets to be healed, right? So do the work on healing that, and then really opening into that. And so I'm just going to take one more question, and then we're going to wrap it up for today, because I know that you guys have been like here and fully engaged, and I'm super appreciating that. I'm appreciating you being here. I know a bunch of you who are here, in the US. I mean, we're having Memorial Day and a lot of people are having barbecues and being with family. So I appreciate you showing up here. And so I'm seeing some questions. Okay. All right. Okay, so the last question I will take is, I'm going to choose this one that is going to serve you more highly, right? So this question is from Kara. Oh, hold on. Things just shifted. Okay, there it is. Will acupuncture heal triggers without going into the story? How does one attract sovereign relationships when one seems to be surrounded by those trapped in the matrix? So one thing that I talk about all the time is, especially as an empath, is really being super diligent about what you allow into your energy field. Like if you are surrounded by people who are trapped in the matrix, that's one of the biggest problems you got. That's the biggest thing that you get to shift, right? Because if that's who you're surrounding yourself with, then that's what you're going to act at. Your energy level is only going to be at the level of those 5 people that you most surround yourself with. So that is super important to really recognize, first of all. And so you get to take ownership of that, right? You get to take ownership of who you allow in your life, who you allow to influence your energy field. And if it seems like everyone surrounding you is all trapped in the matrix, then time to do an inventory, right? And I mean, that's just really the truth. Because if you're not getting lifted up, if you are not being lifted up into the truth of the frequency of what's going on in this world, and everyone around you is like believing all the lies and illusions, then you need to upgrade what you're surrounding yourself with, right? Acupuncture healing triggers without going into the story. Well, you need to actually go into what it is you're holding. You can't just like do acupuncture and not talk about anything, right? And if you are seeing an acupuncturist and they're not talking with you about your stuff, then I'd go see another acupuncturist. Because me, as a licensed acupuncturist, I go there with everything, with my clients, with my patients. And so if someone's coming in and they want acupuncture and they have some triggers they want to move through, first of all, they need to want to move through them. They need to be willing to release their attachment to that fear and trauma, right? And you need to be willing to get real with yourself, because honestly, there's no time. And there's no time to be bullshitting yourself, honestly. If you're really serious about healing, is like, get honest with yourself, right? So I hope that helped. And hey, Alexia, yes to sovereignty. Yes, like she's my colleague. We've been doing a lot of awesome work together recently. So yes, and how wonderful, and such a perfect note to end on too, because we're actually wrapping it up. And so today's topic was 5 ways to embrace your sovereignty. I talked about the definition of sovereignty by Lisa Renee, an awesome version of that definition, what sovereignty is, what sovereignty isn't, why embracing your sovereignty is vital if you're here to be a wayshower for humanity during this pivotal time in the world, and then the 5 ways to embrace your sovereignty. So I know, like, I just gave a lot to you. Hopefully you're not fried. But here's the next step, right? Like, if you have been doing that transmutation work, you've been embracing your sovereignty, you've been embracing your I am from an empowered place, you see yourself as unlimited with your time, money, capability, what you're creating in the world, right? And you're ready for what's next for you, and you are connected with your purpose and also obviously connected with your heart, and you'd like to go deeper and you'd like to be supported by me, I would love to support you with your next steps, what you're creating. And especially if you're a spiritually conscious entrepreneur who's here to create your epic business, who's going to, create light and empowerment in the planet, I'm going to share with you how to manifest that, right? And I will support you through that. So if that's something you're interested in, I do that through my Power Activation work. I don't do single sessions. And then I also do mentorship programs. I also have mentorship programs, and it depends on what's a good fit for you. So I can't, like, share here what would be a good fit for you, because that would entail conversation. So if you are interested in having a conversation about your power, about the next steps of how I could support you in being unleashed in your sovereignty, then I recommend DMing me, and we can talk a little bit about what your powerful purpose is. And ultimately, it would be to book a call with my empowerment coach, Jennifer. She is awesome, and she'll really support you and hold you high. She's got like a really powerfully activated heart. She did do deeper work with me, so she knows the ins and outs of how that looks like. And so, yeah, so if that resonates for you, DM me and let's talk. And thank you so much, Alexia. I really appreciate your words. I've been learning so much from you as well. Okay, everyone, happy Memorial Day. Much love, light, and power to you. And I look forward to connecting with you. And of course, share your comments, whether it's live or in replay. Share your comments about your number one takeaway on this. And if you're ready to be supported and to do some deeper work together, DM me and let me know.